happy Mindfulness Monday. Our next Mindfulness Monday session will be next week on Monday, Decluttering Our Minds with Dr. Danielle Carnes. So thank you again for being here today. Every week, we bring you a new program through our PD Health at Home series, Mindfulness Mondays, Wellness Wednesdays, Fitness Fridays, and a few more programs over here. This Wednesday, we do have our expert briefing on artificial intelligence. So if you're interested in that topic or anything else, please just register and learn more at parkinson.org/pdhealth. PD Health at Home is presented by the Light of Day Foundation. So thank you, Light of Day. Now, with lots and lots of pleasure, I would love to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Taylor Rush. She is a familiar face to Mindfulness Mondays. So Taylor, Dr. Rush, I'll lead it to you.
Thank you. Yes, I answer to both. So, hi, everyone. It's so good to see you here for our Mindfulness Monday. And it is actually a beautiful sunny day here in Cleveland, and it's two in a row. We had a beautiful Mother's Day yesterday, so I will take it. And I can only hope that that trend will continue. And I hope that there's some sunshine in your neck of the woods too. So today I thought that we could talk a little bit about the weight associated with constantly coping. I'm a health psychologist. I specialize in coping skills. How do we cope with the stress of life, with the stress of chronic medical issues, of the stress of everything that contributes to that? And I think in the midst of constantly trying to cope, we don't always necessarily recognize that it comes with its own weight and sometimes its own exhaustion. And in my work with individuals who have Parkinson's disease, as well as care partners, I think it's something that a lot of my patients understand very, very deeply. Because I think one of the things that can be really hard for others to see is that Parkinson's always requires a great deal of ongoing adaptation. And yes, there are some visible symptoms that you have. So people may notice tremor, or they may notice slowness, or maybe some imbalance. But what they don't necessarily always notice is the invisible work that you are doing all day long. This could be how you're monitoring your physical symptoms, how you're planning your day and activity around your medication timing, how you constantly may have to adjust your pacing depending on if it's a good day or a not so good day, because not any 2 days are created equal. How you have to anticipate and think ahead for how to plan for things, how you need to recover from a really long day and the fatigue associated with that, how you can try to compensate for episodes of freezing or imbalance, how you may be trying to not worry, which is kind of like sometimes saying, don't think about pink elephants. How you may try to put on the brave face for everyone else and just kind of keep life on track. And so, something that I will often hear from the folks that I work with is that they always feel like they have to be on. They always have to be managing. They always have to be calibrating. They always have to be anticipating. And sometimes even rest can stop feeling restful because even as we're trying to relax, the nervous system is still on and it's still vigilant. And I hear a lot of times from people, I'm tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. I could sleep for 10, 12, 15 hours and I'm still going to feel exhausted. And I think the difference between being physically, tired or sleepy versus exhausted are two different things because being exhausted is definitely not just physical. It's emotional, it's cognitive in terms of how and what we're able to think. And it's within our nervous system. And it's this fatigue that just comes from carrying on for a long period of time with a very heavy backpack. And that's often how I describe this to people is that, you're carrying around a backpack and everyone has a backpack of stress. We all do. But when you're carrying around a backpack that includes Parkinson's, you're carrying a few extra bricks and it's a lot heavier. So yes, yes, we all have stress. Yes, we all have our issues, but that backpack gets heavier with Parkinson's. And I think sometimes people become so focused on coping and carrying around that backpack that they don't necessarily recognize how much energy coping itself requires. And so, as much as I, am trying to help people keep up or maintain some sort of, normalcy, as we may call it, or just quality of life, it can sometimes create a pattern where people feel like they're just keeping their nostrils above water, they're surviving, but they're not necessarily truly restoring. And so that's, another point at which I think mindfulness comes in incredibly handy because again, mindfulness is about being able to notice what is, being able to notice without judgment. And so how can we begin to gently notice what we are carrying around, what that backpack looks like, and how heavy it is? And that's not as a criticism, like, oh, I'm not strong enough to carry around this backpack, or I'm not doing a good enough job, but it's just awareness of how heavy it really is. And mindfulness, as you know, is not about forcing ourselves to relax because that often has a paradoxical effect. The more we try to relax, the less we do. And I think really being mindful in this situation is about being honest and compassionate about all the things that you're carrying around in that backpack. And because I have a lot of people who say, oh, everyone has something, other people handle more than I do. I just need to push through. I shouldn't feel this tired. And those are things that they may say to themselves, but they would never necessarily say to somebody else. It's an interesting double standard. But I think it's important to recognize that the nervous system is not being lazy when it asks for rest. It's telling us something. It's communicating something important. And I think one of the hardest things for people is to learn that rest is not necessarily just something you earn after breaking down. 'Cause I think that's at the point that we often will then are forced to listen to our bodies. Rest is how we remain functional. And when you're trying to cope in the midst of a chronic neurologic condition, stress, responsibilities, uncertainty, we need to have rest in addition to sleep. Okay. Rest and sleep, two different things. So we need to be able to sometimes, even just for a few moments, let go of some of that vigilance, be able to allow the body to soften just a little bit. And it's not, a matter of trying to solve everything that you have in front of you, but just giving yourself permission to set the backpack down for a moment. Every once in a while, we can set it down. It doesn't mean we get to chuck it and abandon it, but can we set it down for a moment before we have to pick it back up and keep climbing the mountain? And so, how can we do that in a way that is restorative? How can we do that in a way that's well timed where we recognize, yes, this is something that I need to do? And how can we do it without guilt that, oh gosh, I shouldn't be resting right now. I should be doing something. So I think so often we tie our sense of worth to what we do, our productivity, our output, our effort. But in fact, sometimes that effort does need to turn inward in order for us to keep going. So I love that all of you are here today because it tells me that you recognize the need to have space for this. You recognize that your body, your mind needs a pause every once in a while. And so I really hope that it's more than, once a week for half an hour on a Monday, but it is a wonderful place to start. So I think in a lot of ways we are probably all on the same page as to why this is important. And so I want to make sure that we carve out some time for this so that we can see how does it feel to take this pause. And for some of you, you are well familiar with what this pause feels like and you enjoy it, you crave it, that's why you're here. And for some of you, this might be a completely brand new experience and it's kind of foreign and uncomfortable, and that's okay too. But the point is that you're here and you are recognizing the need and the priority of at least carving out these precious minutes for yourself. So, with that said, I'm going to invite you to join me in a meditation related to this topic. And I really want you to think about approaching yourself with the same compassion that you would for someone else who's been trying very hard for a very long time, because you deserve the same compassion as you would give anybody else. And while it feels weird and awkward and sometimes uncomfortable, that's okay. It's a place to start carving out space. So let's go ahead and get into a comfy position, whatever that looks like for you. Whatever position that is, I just want to make sure that you feel supported. You don't have to necessarily sit perfectly still, and no one is ever able to meditate perfectly. That is just not how this works. You just need to come as you are and allow your body to be supported by a chair, couch, floor, wherever you are able to rest. And if you feel comfortable doing so, you can certainly close your eyes. It helps you to focus. For other people, it's more helpful to kind of softly gaze a few feet in front of them on the floor. And let's just start by taking one slow, deep breath in and gently exhale. And we're not trying to force the breath to be big or long or deep, just simply allowing your body to breathe, allowing yourself that inhale and exhale cycle one or two more times. And as you build awareness of your breath, maybe noticing places where your body is making contact with support. You might notice your sit bones being supported by the chair beneath you. You might feel your feet kind of anchoring to the floor. Your hands might be resting in your lap or on the furniture. And as you see these points of contact and you feel them, consider allowing yourself to notice that in this moment, I do not have to hold myself up alone. And if just for a few moments, see if you can loosen that constant impulse of doing. There's nothing that we have to solve right now, nothing that has to be fixed right now, nothing you have to prepare for in this moment. All you have to do is arrive right here, right now. And you may notice that your mind wants to keep working. You're trying to plan or monitor or analyze. That's just a natural impulse that our brain has, and that's okay. It's not a failure of meditation. But the more you may notice those doing impulses, it is a good indicator of a potentially stressed nervous system. So rather than fighting your mind's impulses, I invite you to simply notice and perhaps gently say to yourself, for these few moments, I can soften a little. Maybe see if your shoulders relax and drop a little farther from your ears. Maybe notice your jaw softens. Maybe you lessen tension in the muscles around your eyes. Again, this is not forcing relaxation, just disengaging in so much effort. And if it feels comfortable for you, shifting back to that focus on your breath and just the sensation of the inhale and the exhale. And you may even notice that with each exhale, it almost naturally asks your body to let go a little. Maybe even imagining with each breath out that something settles a little bit more. And not necessarily forever, just for right now. With each out breath, maybe you let go of some worry or vigilance or responsibility. Just allowing yourself to set it aside briefly. You don't have to carry everything every single second. Now I want you to consider silently repeating a few phrases that I'll offer. And you don't necessarily have to force yourself to believe them completely. We're just offering them gently as something that could be true. So consider saying to yourself, this is a lot to carry. It makes sense that I feel tired sometimes. I do not need to earn rest. I am allowed moments of ease. I can care for myself without giving up. I can also care for myself without feeling guilty. And if in the midst of this, you notice certain emotions arise, that's okay. Whatever they are, just gently acknowledge them, let them be present. There's nothing wrong with emotion. It's just sometimes when the nervous system finally starts to slow down a little, feelings that had been pushed down start to surface. Beach ball of emotion we've shoved underwater begins to come up. And you don't have to fix them. You don't have to shove them away. Just allow them some room to float. And if they feel powerful or overwhelming, just remember your breath is your anchor. You can breathe in steadiness and breathe out pressure. You can breathe in support and breathe out striving. Sometimes, if it helps you to ground, you can put a hand over your heart. Sometimes the weight of that physical feedback can be helpful. Breathing in, being enough. Breathing out, self criticism. For a moment, imagine that you're speaking to yourself in a way you might talk to someone you deeply care about. Someone perhaps that's been exhausted for a long time. Maybe that looks like you saying you're doing the best you can, or you don't have to carry this perfectly, or even it's okay to rest. And maybe notice what happens in your body as you hear those words. It may not mean that you feel instantly calm, but sometimes it helps to at least interrupt the cycle of constant pressure. And so even those small interruptions can be quite helpful. And they can look like noticing the room around you, the sounds around you, feeling of air on your skin, your feet planted on the floor, or your body being supported. Let's take one more slow, deep breath in. and out. Just gently remind yourself that you are not failing because you feel exhausted. As humans, we're not meant to endure constant stress without restoration. So moments like these really do matter. And when you're ready, start to slowly reorient to your space, maybe introducing a little bit of gentle movement, wiggling your fingers and toes, shifting in your seat a little, and coming back to our Zoom space here. We start to see faces. I believe we will bring our chat back open for anyone who'd like to share their reflections or experiences from today's practice. And as you reflect on that, I want to make sure that we all recognize that I think everyone in this room is incredibly skilled at learning how to endure. But endurance is definitely not the same thing as restoration. And we don't heal when we push harder, but when we can allow some of these moments of softening and gentleness, it can help us to keep going, to help with the chronic, ongoing recalibration and all that comes with that. So see these moments as important parts of how you cope. It's not always about trying. Sometimes it's stepping back, which is very counterintuitive, especially in a lot of how most of us were raised. So I see a few comments here. Someone said they feel calm and peace. Another person shared that they're a caregiver at work, and this was a really nice break. Someone asked if there will be a recording, and there will be. So these usually come out a week or two after the event. So by all means, and all of our previous Mindfulness Mondays are archived on the YouTube page. So, and I think Bree may have put that on the chat there, so you can take a look. Someone said one of the most helpful sessions. Good, because I never know. I'm always putting this out there. I'm like, let's see how this goes today. And I base it on the things that I see and the things that I talk about with people. So I'm really happy to hear that. Perfect day for this topic. I plan to try to repeat this for myself as I can. Someone asked if I heard the 4-7-8 method of breathing. Yes. So breathing in 4, holding 7, breathing out 8. There's the 4-7-8. There's the 4-4-4-4. That's box breathing, where you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. Um, Everyone has a different, what we call resonance breath, which is the cadence of a inhale versus exhale and the pauses in between. So really finding the one that works for you, I think is important, and that may look different depending on each person. Uh, Someone said this was their first time and they want to come to further sessions. Thank you for joining us. And someone said, would you repeat something you said? It was related to the thoughts about doing being a signal of a stress nervous system, and I wanted to write that down. Very meaningful. Um, I wish I could remember exactly what you said. I have people who tell me that. They're like, what did you just say? That was great. And I'm like, I am not even entirely sure how I wrote it, or how I said it. Um, but I do believe it was the idea that when we have trouble turning off the doing thoughts, that we're constantly like, what's on my to-do list? What's next? What do I need to plan for? What am I worried about that's already happened that I have no control over? But all of the action-based and doing impulses are a lot of times, again, it's not a judgment, but this is an indication that my nervous system is stressed. This is an indication that I have a lot of trouble shifting out of the doing mode to the being mode because I'm so conditioned to be in that stressed and pressured place. And someone said my struggle is I had someone in my life who would tell me I was not enough, even if I believed that I was, and it's very hard to block those cruel lies. Yeah, isn't it amazing how our brain is so set to remember some of those often inaccurate but incredibly harsh statements about ourselves, and they can be the hardest things to let go. I kind of, it's kind of like I grew up in Florida and we had these little sand spur briars that had these tiny hooks, and they were really, really hard to get out of your feet if you're ever walking around barefoot. And to me, those critical comments remind me of those sand spurs because they are incredibly useless and unhelpful, and they are really, really hard to get out. So I am realizing where we are on time. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for your comments. And I am so happy that this was a meaningful practice for you. Hope that you are able to carry this forward even in small ways as you go about your week. And I look forward to seeing everybody next month.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raj, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Until next week, take care.